Greetings, Satnam. What's going on, everybody? Hope you're doing well on this morning here today. Morning for me, at least, I should say. And it's actually a wet, sort of overcast, rainy morning here in Nevada City, which I feel is very appropriate for this lunar eclipse forecast because lunar eclipses are a little different than solar eclipses. The lunar eclipse is connected to the moon, and the moon is directly connected to our emotions, to our feelings, to our intuition, which the water element is directly connected to as well. So I feel like we've got this elemental support today, which is great. And, if you haven't watched the previous video from this month on the solar eclipse, I would really encourage you to press pause right here, go and watch that video first, and then come back to this one because there's a lot of context that gets set up in that previous video that carries into this one. But I want to jump right into today and, just again, contrasting this lunar eclipse that's going to be coming up on the 28th. It's different than the solar eclipse because solar eclipses have much to do more so, in my interpretation, with direct spirituality, with transcendence, with consciousness, because those are the things that the sun represents. It really is a manifestation of God, of illumination, of enlightenment. And in this case, the moon is much more, again, as I said, represented with our emotions and with our feelings, but very specifically when it comes to eclipses as well, it's connected to our subconscious mind, the part of our mind and our feeling nature that operates subconsciously, meaning below the level of our consciousness, below the level of our typical awareness. So these are things that are operating within us and running us that oftentimes we really are not at all actually aware of. These are our reactions, our triggers, our, kind of intense reactions to things. And so lunar eclipses tend to bring that up. The word eclipse is like it's eclipsing the mind, and words like insanity are connected to the moon and to eclipses specifically. Not to say that we're going to go insane during this eclipse, but it's an opportunity to see those things and to be in relationship with those things in ways that we typically are not if we're really paying attention to them. And that's beautiful because it's an opportunity. All of this stuff is an opportunity to continuously get refined, to polish ourselves so that more of our pure intelligence, our pure bliss nature can really shine through, because that is our natural state. It is a state of love, it's a state of equanimity, but it's that subconscious mind and the ego that often gets in the way. So, with this today, what I'm going to say too is that over these coming weeks, from the 14th until the 28th, the moon is waxing. We had a new moon when it was conjunct with the sun on the 14th that caused the solar eclipse. And now, over these next 2 weeks, the moon is waxing until it's finally going to be full, and we'll have the lunar eclipse on the 28th. So the moon's strength is growing over these coming weeks. So it's, again, a great opportunity to really tune in with that feminine, energetic, that emotional nature, that intuitive nature that we all have. And what I particularly like about this eclipse is that, like, every planet is involved in it. It's like a full family affair where pretty much every planet is doing something for this eclipse. So I'm going to just kind of do a little timelining of things. This is the 16th of October. So the 16th to the 17th to the 18th are kind of big days because the sun is going to change signs. It's going to move from Virgo into Libra, and Mercury is also going to move from Virgo into Libra. So we're going to end up with the moon, or sorry, with Mars, the sun, and Mercury all in Libra. And as you know from the last eclipse, Mercury was really the key player in a lot of respects in that solar eclipse. And it's going to remain involved in this lunar eclipse, as is Mars. So as we jump ahead to the 28th specifically, we're going to see all those planets kind of posted up there. And so this is our eclipse lineup. We've got Mars, Sun, and Mercury in Libra. We've got Jupiter and the moon in Aries. We've got Saturn in Aquarius and Venus in Leo. So check this out. The sun is very weak in Libra. It's what we call debilitated. It's one of the weakest positions in the zodiac for the sun. So we've got a debilitated sun in Libra that's going to be eclipsing the moon in Aries. Now, the thing about Libra, I'm a Libra rising, so I have a very particular affinity to Libra, but Libra is a sign of balance. It's a sign of love. It's the heart chakra, Anahata chakra. And it's all about harmony and balance in relationships. But the actual eclipse itself, the moon is in Aries. And Aries is much more a sign of will, of drive, of ambition, and of fire. So, you know, with the eclipse last month, I sort of was talking about this balance of like a softened Mars, that you get this sort of loving, more kind of artistic aspect of Mars and the fire element. And that's going to continue, specifically because we have this very interesting exchange between Venus in Leo, which is ruled by the sun, and the sun in Libra, which is ruled by Venus. So you've got this, what we call exchange between Leo and Libra and Venus and the sun. So I like this because you've got this sort of weakened sun, which can be that overinflated ego if it's too strong, becomes a little bit more humble, a little bit more loving, a little bit softer. And so Venus's energy is really kind of weighing into the sun, especially, which is causing the eclipse of the moon in Aries. What's so interesting too is you have Mars down here in Libra, and Mars is directly influencing into the eclipse in Aries, and Mars rules Aries. So you've got a very strong Mars that's kicking its energy into the eclipse as well. Meanwhile, you got Jupiter hanging out in Aries. It's retrograde, which I don't love, but it's still Jupiter, and that's the best of the best for wisdom, for prosperity, for devotion. And so we do have a Jupiter that's sort of wrapping its energy onto the moon. And Jupiter and the moon are best friends. They love hanging out together. The moon feels safe when it's with Jupiter. And the moon is also good friends with Mars and the sun. So you've got a lot of friend groups of the planets hanging out together, which is good. Mercury, moon, and Jupiter are like sweet. They're very sweet and tender and soft and cozy. So I do like the fact that Jupiter's influence is strong here. At the same time, Mercury is sort of minorly involved. So we do get some Mercury energy kicking in, which I talked a lot about Mercury last video. But then the last thing, which is kind of the most interesting, a little bit dicey, is that Saturn is involved in this eclipse. Saturn is directly influencing the eclipse from its position in Aquarius. You know, Saturn's difficult in general. Saturn causes constriction, it causes difficulty. But again, the good thing about this eclipse is that Saturn and Venus are having a strong relationship. And so to me, Venus, once again, its loving energy is really softening up Saturn. And Venus and Saturn do really well together because it's sort of like, you know, I'm just going to say in like a relationship, Saturn is maybe like a little bit that overly intense kind of mental man, and Venus is that beautiful, sensual, soft woman, spontaneous. And so they complement each other really well. Saturn sort of keeps Venus in check, and Venus kind of keeps Saturn in check. So to me, it actually is a good combination and synergy. So that's sort of a lineup of all the planets and the role that they're playing in this eclipse. Now, the only ones I haven't talked to as much about in this video, and these are really more complex, so I don't like to get into them too much. But if you are interested in learning more, then you can take one of the online courses that I have that really unpack these lunar nodes of Rahu and Ketu. Maybe I'll do a video another time about them. But these lunar nodes are very important, and Rahu again is it's a dangerous energy. It's a demonic energy. It's one that causes delusion, and it causes misperception of the mind. So that's the I would say the most difficult thing about this lunar eclipse is that Rahu is involved in it. And so we just need to be really careful about our reactions, about our feelings. But I think all in all, with everything else happening, there is more kind of, I would say, positive potential to it. And the last thing I'm going to close with is I'm going to share my screen in a sec, and I'm going to read actually in detail about the what we call nakshatra, the nakshatra. Nakshatra is a constellation that the moon sits in. And this eclipse is happening in a nakshatra that's known as ASHWINI, ASHWINI nakshatra, very healing nakshatra. So I do think that this will, because of all the energy involved, I think this will create, it will create a situation specifically that probably has to do with relationships, because Libra is a relational sign and all of life is relationships. You can't escape it. And Aries is more of a sense of self kind of sign. You do have this debilitated sun, and you've got Mars involved. And so, it's like embrace it when it comes. Like it's serving. Like the seemingly difficult situations are really asking us to probe more deeply into why do we function the way we function? Why do we think the way we think? Why do we feel the way we feel? And allow for much more expanded awareness and conscious choice making. But it's probably going to push some buttons. So, just embrace it when it comes. So the last thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to read this description, and I'm going to post it in the channel too if you want to read it. But this is the nakshatra, and this to me is really the energy of this eclipse. So it's in the nakshatra of Ashwini. Ashwini is ruled by the Ashwins. These are the twin gods whose name literally means the horsemen. They are the lords of the journey and take us on the path of light that leads to the divine. They are the first deities of light and precede the breaking of the dawn. Some see them as Mercury and Venus, which are both involved in the eclipse, as the morning stars. Others see them as the sun and moon, or heaven and earth. They are youthful, or children, the magic twins who are thought to have special healing powers. These twins represent the secret unity hidden in duality, the power of integration or opposites to produce transformation, which is what eclipses are all about. There's two of them. They stand for balance, equilibrium, and restoration. That's Venus, which is so much of what's in this eclipse. Without this at the beginning of our enterprises, we will not succeed. That's the Mars energy. That's the Aries energy. They also show the inherent duality of human action in the realm of karma. The Ashwins ride a chariot through the air, which encompasses all the worlds. They also travel on a ship across the sea. They are the great miracle workers of the gods who heal the sick, give sight to the blind, healing to the deaf, movement to the lame, raise the dead, save the oppressed, and work marvels of all types. Sounds pretty good. In this respect, they are the great doctors and magicians. They hold the secret knowledge of the honey bliss, which can give immortality or spiritual knowledge. As lords of honey, they give bliss and happiness and gifts from distant realms. So that to me is why, again, eclipses always are a time of transformation and illumination, but this one is such a time where I really encourage, that's why I'm giving this stuff away. offering the 2-for-1 deals, the discounted rates on the courses. This is a window right now that's so good to be in the study of Ayurveda, of Jyotish, of anything that leads to expansion of consciousness. Really supportive. These gods rule the first breaking of light, whether at dawn, the new moon, or the winter solstice, which we're coming up on the winter solstice. We just experienced the new moon. They show the light of thought at the beginning of our undertakings, which cause us to hesitate and consider the meaning of what we are attempting to do. They show the pranic force necessary to set anything in motion. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here. ASHWINI is ruled by Ketu, the planet of doubt, negativity, knowledge, and critical mind. Ketu is what caused the solar eclipse that we just had. Here it symbolizes the doubts that we have at the beginning of things. It shows the danger of losing our heads by being too impulsive or from speaking too rashly. On the other hand, it shows the sacrifice of the head, ego mind, to inner truth and bliss, which is kind of with this debilitated sun, I think a positive thing for this eclipse. Skip ahead a little bit. Is ASHWINI is in the sign of Aries. Ketu casts its shadow on Mars, the ruler of Aries, which we've talked about. Here we must learn to doubt our martial and vital impulses and passions, which are quite strong. We must be too careful of being too willful or self-motivated, or we will overextend ourselves and literally lose our heads. And again, that's what eclipses do. That's what Rahu does, is it severs the head, it severs the mind and causes problems. But if we control it, then we gain the positive aspect of it. So I'm going to pause there and just kind of end. If you want to keep reading, you can. And really, again, I thank you all for tuning in, for those of you that actually watch this stuff and enjoy it. And if it doesn't make sense, again, just let me know. There's plenty of other free videos that I have on each of the planets if you really want to learn about them. And I do encourage you, if you want to dive deeper into this stuff, obviously a personal reading, I can give you way more specificity about your chart, about the period you're in, about how this is going to unfold in your life. And, if you want to take one of the courses, again, that really unpacks the signs, the houses, Rahu, Ketu, remedial measures that you can do. So I wish you well on this eclipse. Again, I'm jazzed. I think this is a wonderful time, the changing of the seasons, preparing for winter, coming out of summer, going inward, and doing something with this energy. Like, these are not passive eclipses where we just sit around and we do our practices, but these are portals to me that really can get put to use into beautiful, creative, soulful projects and endeavors that really are going to serve life and serve the expansion of consciousness. So I encourage you to do something. If you've got something you've been thinking about, a project, it takes work. That's why most people don't do the projects that ultimately are perhaps the most influential in terms of a legacy. They're hard, but that's because they're rich and they challenge us and they push us and they bring up our triggers of insecurity, of inadequacy, of perfection, of rejection, of whatever. That's the subconscious that needs to get purified. So I thank you for letting me, share my Dharma with you all. And again, I hope to be in communication with you personally if that's what you're called for. And until then, let's ride these eclipse waves. Sat Nam.